was supposed to be a fun, spooky adventure. Just me and my friends, Leo and Maya, spending a night in Blackwood Forest. You know, the one with all the legends? The one everyone calls the Haunted Forest? We laughed it off, packed our gear, a tent, some snacks, and a cheap EMF meter we bought online for a laugh. We were going to be ghost hunters for a night. The forest was beautiful at first, sunlight filtering through the tall, ancient trees, the air crisp and clean. We found a small clearing, set up our tent, and as dusk settled, the vibe started to change. The shadows grew longer, twisting into strange shapes. The normal forest sounds, the chirping birds and rustling leaves, slowly faded into a heavy, watchful silence. It was like the entire forest was holding its breath. We started our investigation around a campfire, pulling out the EMF meter. It was just a toy, really, but we waved it around dramatically, calling out, "Is anyone here with us?" We were giggling, not taking it seriously at all. Then, the meter's needle twitched. It spiked into the red, beeping erratically. We all froze. Leo tried to rationalize it, saying it was probably picking up our phones, even though we had no signal out there. But a cold feeling began to creep up my spine. Later, as we were trying to sleep, the sounds started. It wasn't the usual snap of a twig or an animal call. It was a faint whisper, just on the edge of hearing. It sounded like it was coming from all around us at once. We'd sit bolt upright, listening, but then it would stop. Maya swore she saw a tall, slender shadow moving between the trees, just outside the range of our firelight. We tried to convince ourselves it was just our imaginations running wild, that the ghost stories were getting to us, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. The whisper came back, clearer this time. It wasn't a word, just a sound, a long, drawn-out sigh that seemed to carry an immense sadness. The EMF meter, which we'd left on the ground, started wailing again. That was it for us. We scrambled, tearing down the tent in a panic, throwing everything into our bags. We didn't even put out the fire properly. We just ran. We bolted through the darkness, branches scratching our faces, stumbling over roots, not daring to look back. The whispering seemed to follow us, echoing through the trees, always just a few steps behind. When we finally burst out of the tree line and saw the headlights of my car, the relief was so intense I almost collapsed. We threw our gear in the trunk and peeled out of there, not speaking a word the entire drive back to my place. The silence in the car was heavier than the silence in the forest. We were all thinking the same thing. What was that? We crashed on my living room floor, too scared to be alone. I thought that would be the end of it. A scary story to tell our friends, a night we'd never forget. I was wrong. The next morning, I went to unpack the car. As I pulled out the tent, a single, long, black feather floated out and landed on the driveway. It wasn't from any bird I'd ever seen. It was almost unnaturally black and cold to the touch. I didn't think much of it then. I just tossed it aside and brought the rest of the gear inside. That night, it started again. Tai whisper. It was faint, coming from the corner of my bedroom. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. I told myself I was just tired, still spooked from the night before. I turned on all the lights, checked the locks, but there was nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I felt that same oppressive, watchful presence from the forest. But now, it was in my home. Over the next few days, strange things kept happening. Objects would move on their own. A book falling off a shelf, a coffee mug sliding across the counter. I'd hear footsteps in the hallway when no one was there. The whisper became a constant companion, a soft, sorrowful sound that would start whenever I was alone. It was driving me insane. I called Leo and Maya. They were experiencing it too. Maya said her dog would just stare and growl at an empty corner of her room for hours. Leo's electronics were going haywire, turning on and off by themselves. We realized the terrifying truth. We hadn't escaped the forest. Something had attached itself to us. Something had followed us home. We decided we had to do something. We went back to the old town library, digging through dusty archives about Blackwood Forest. We found what we were looking for in a worn-out book of local folklore. It spoke of a whispering shade, a lonely spirit that roamed the forest, drawn to strong emotions. It wasn't malicious, the book side, but deeply sorrowful, and it would sometimes latch on to people, seeking solace from its eternal loneliness. The book mentioned that the spirit was drawn to a specific item, something it had lost. It didn't say what. We thought back to our trip. The gear, the food, nothing seemed significant. Then it hit me. The feather, the strange, black feather that fell out of the tent. I had thrown it aside in my driveway. I rushed outside, frantically searching. It was still there, caught under a bush. According to the legend, the only way to appease the spirit was to return what belonged to it. We had no other choice. The three of us, terrified but determined, drove back to Blackwood Forest. This time, we didn't go in laughing. We went in with respect, with a sense of purpose. We walked back to the clearing where we had camped, my hand clutching the cold, black feather. The forest felt different this time, not menacing, but sad. We reached the spot and I placed the feather gently on the ground where our tent had been. We stood there in silence for a moment. I just said, "We're sorry. We're returning what's yours. Please, find your peace." As the words left my mouth, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves around us. The feather lifted from the ground, swirled in the air for a moment, and then just dissolved. It turned into a wisp of black smoke and vanished. The heavy, oppressive atmosphere we'd felt before lifted instantly. It was like the sun had broken through the clouds, even though it was late afternoon. The forest came alive with sound again, birds singing, the wind whispering through the trees. But this time it was just the wind. We walked out of the forest that day feeling a profound sense of calm. The strange happenings at our home stopped immediately. No more whispers, no more moving objects. It was over. We learned a powerful lesson that day. Some legends aren't just stories. Some places hold deep sorrow, and they demand respect. We went looking for a ghost, and we found one. But it wasn't a monster. It was just something lost and lonely. We never went back to Blackwood Forest, and I'll never forget the sound of that whisper. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've had any similar experiences, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more strange tales. Stay safe out there.